For its spectacular living representations and decors, the Puy du Fou theme park has infused French history with renewed attraction. Its creator, Philippe de Villiers, endowed it with a unique mission to transmit eternal emotions. Whilst this signals deeper political implications, Puy du Fou's relation to nationalism remains understudied. Dismissing it as entertainment, current research ignores the fanatical violence waged against Puy du Fou's critics, denounced as traitors to French history. Under this facade of amusement lurk darker nationalist ambitions. Through medieval romanticism, Puy du Fou binds French identity to blood, Catholicism, and a class hierarchy perpetuating birth culture and integral nationalism. Its fantasy casts extreme droite as France's righteous leader. Cultural and racial exclusion guarantee a return to a nation that has never existed, that will never come. For Pugin, Gothic medieval romanticism reflected a primordial Christian civilization underpinned by moral supremacy, hierarchy, and a unity of purpose between cathedral builders and artists. Puy du Fou replicates this through three aesthetics: folklore, nature, and chivalry. Sign of Triumph retraces the birth of French medieval romanticism through Christian folklore. Romans are barbarians wrought with cruelty. Centurions wear dehumanizing masks, recalling the gold of their fabricated idols, and black armor signals their inner darkness, a primitivity attached to miscreancy. Gauls embody Pugin's proto-medieval fantasy. Sky blue costumes indicate moral purity. Their god of love, justice, and charity is real, holding normative supremacy over barbaric blood religion. This hierarchy echoes Pugin's medieval authenticity. Cathedral builders, united under glorious Christian purpose, are morally superior to heretics. Clashing aesthetics typify cultural differences assigned to different national identities, perpetuating this hierarchy. Christian identity is eternally great, pagan others are eternally barbaric. French identity is thus cultural. To be French is to be Christian, and to be in normative supremacy against non-Christian others. Damien seemingly emerges from Gaul consensus. Forced to gaze up to Roman tyrants, Gauls resemble a bottom-up revolution united behind their leader. The heroic individual brought forth by populist will implies a hierarchy within. Normative supremacy is underpinned by a moral order inherent to class, which Puy du Fou circumvents by emphasizing Damien's imminent righteousness over his centurion rank. To Pugin, organic development required the willful hierarchization of cathedral builders under a heroic individual, the artist. Gauls thus become a romantic mass moved by national will to unite under Damien, their king. If this will is imminent, then it is always what French identity wants, a societal harmony to which it must return, more as integral nation under the noble. Sign of Triumph follows a narrative scheme shared by all Puy du Fou representations. Pre-existing Christian harmony is destroyed by non-Catholic others. Divine or monarchical power eliminates invaders, and true civilization is restored. Whilst violence against the French is barbaric, violence against non-Catholics is legitimate because it restores the righteous nation. Repetition creates a cultural permanence derived from historical determinism. Puy du Fou's avoidance of tales of defeat demonstrates that Frenchness is constantly struggling against non-Catholic others, but always triumphant under the noble. Pugin ties national glory to medieval authenticity, which Puy du Fou replicates through nature. Damien is a rightful king of Gauls because he is Gaul by birth. Primordial Gaul blood legitimizes his claim over land. Mont des Alouettes is his by birthright. Roman masks enable Puy du Fou to avoid discussing race whilst implying biological divergences. All actors are white, yet the gold prevents any ethnic similarities. Different bloods attached to different territories signal different and incompatible biological identities. Land is Gaul, and by extension, French. Sign of Triumph's stadium removes its audience from nature. To Viollet-le-Duc, Roman architecture reflected a trampling of Gaul land. Stadiums remained Rome's monuments, destroying authentic Gaul environments. Romans are thus biologically incompatible with French territory. Harmony between neo-Romanesque decors and nature symbolizes the emergence of French civilization from land itself, a primordial claim to nation as territory. Puy du Fou's location in a century-old forest enables visitors' reconnection with land considered theirs by birth. Representations open with reminders of primordial bonds between Puy du Fou and animals. The Roman Empire's artificiality is demonstrated by its animal parade. Roman geese, Egyptian ostriches, Oriental camels. Romans share no real connection with their fauna. In contrast, Puy du Fou's conservatory, a refuge for wholly fantasized ancient French breeds, cements primordial relations between French identity and their animals. Fauna contributes to sublimation. They are vessels for miraculous destinies, thus tied to Catholicism. Damien's quadriga, driven by white horses, miraculously wins. White lionesses refuse to harm his wife. Sublimation interweaves land and spirit, recalling Parisian terroir. Nature recognizes a righteous French identity bound to birth and culture. Secret of the Spear nuances French birth culture by denouncing an other within. The citadel is invaded by race traders, so despite their blood, Bourguignons use Catholicism to deceive Marguerite. They become Murat's étrangers de cœur, highlighting the necessity of both birth and Catholicism in composing French identity. Secret of the Spear retraces a historical continuity underpinned by biological determinism. Puyfollian knights must save the kingdom. Their warrior destiny to sacrifice themselves for the nation is predetermined by gender. They perform their masculinity through equestrian acrobatics, demonstrating an active male spirit synonymous with chivalry and high-risk action, whilst Marguerite stands idle. Their return in caparisons signifies that violence grants them social mobility, revising Mauras's hierarchy. By defending the integral nation, knights are granted recognizable identities tied to class. French men must follow their gender national duty, granting them limited mobility under the noble. Secret of the Spear characterizes female biological determinism as defenselessness and reproduction. To de Villiers, Joan of Arc is not a warrior, but the Maid of Orleans. Marguerite replicates this gender divide. She's associated with the innocence of sheep and flutes, clashing against the knight's rhythmic music. Her fragility, first highlighted by Fulgent, is interiorized. These descriptions mimic childlike vulnerability, rendering Marguerite dependent on male protection. For these protector roles, knights become inherently entitled to female bodies. Violence gets them the damsel. The romance between Marguerite and Fulgent hints at her reproductive duty to the nation, a belief Puy du Fou cemented through their €50,000 donation to an anti-abortion association. National unity is thus maintained by performing gendered duties. Mandelbaum's nationalist fantasy is a three-part mechanism introduced by an ontological void. A split in identity between nation and state fuels an endless search for resolution. French ethnic survivalist theories reflect Parisian anxieties. Cultural change corrupts French identity and hinders predetermined triumph. Fear of banlieue echoes Pugin's modern-day aesthetic decline. Amalgamations of different architectures and faiths deface the nation. For de Villiers, France is a society ravaged by globalization, whose disaffiliated beings perish under invasive architectures, faiths, and by extension, birth cultures. The Puyfollian fantasy offers a national narrative of utopian wholeness built on phantasmic past unity, teaching its audience how to desire by setting conditions for its return. Elusive historical determinism and hierarchies offer order against banlieue chaos. National role and destiny are defined by gender and class with limited mobility. The noble will always save you. French identity thus follows an eternal populist will to be hierarchized. De Villiers recalls Pugin in stating to be French is to behave like a cathedral sculptor, leaving his work without leaving his name. Loss of individuality leads to total homogenization, without class conflict under a righteous leader. The crowd must find its modern noble, extreme droite, self-claimed saviors of French birth culture. Puyfollian jouissance create temporal affective belonging to Murat's integral nation. Puy du Fou's neo-Romanesque style forges an architectural coherence through which visitors relive a fantasized past unity away from modern-day cityscapes. It emulates pre-existing jouissance in neo-Romanesque église de village. Catholic harmony experienced during Mass is transposed at a national level. Sublimation stimulates an emotional apogee, interweaving audiences' bonheur to onstage unity. Puy du Fou's scale itself evokes Pugin's neo-Gothicism. Its gigantism captures the grandeur of a primordial Christian civilization. Viollet-le-Duc stated on Gothicism, Man appears everywhere. The audience is visible, 3,000 to 7,000 seats in broad daylight, and constantly solicited. During Sign of Triumph, microphones clamoring "Free the Gauls" are dispersed amongst the crowd. Spectators seem to directly participate in the representation. The violence of their opposition to the other elevates them as actors. Like cathedral builders, they join the integral nation, until they leave Puy du Fou. Puy du Fou's Synesthenie depends on 4,000 volunteers operating under a Maurrassian hierarchy. Philippe acquires a divine-like quality as a creator of this Puy-Folian nation. Under the supervision of Nicolas and village chiefs, Puy-Foliais reenact Vendean myth history for a night. They are moved by populist will to avenge Vendean aristocrats or nobles, massacred by the 1793-96 Republic, an episode wrongfully deemed a genocide by Puy du Fou. Social mobility from Puy-Foliais to employee emerges from their outstanding performances and loyalty. Similarly, Puy du Fou Academy forms 360 students in dancing, horse riding, or fighting from maternelle to lycée. Their academic curriculum indoctrinates them into the Puy-Folian fantasy, lured by the jouissance of one day becoming a Puy-Folian employee through their performance of literal knighthood. The other becomes a necessary explanation for failing to obtain the fantasy. Puy du Fou demonstrates that French identity is continuously animated by populist will to be integrated under the noble. To be hierarchized is to return to security and unity. To reject this hierarchy is to be a race traitor countering national triumph. Puy du Fou ascribes itself in a new right culture war against liberal norms assuming equality amongst identities. Violence against Maurras étrangers de naissance, or étrangers de cœur, is necessary to purify French birth culture. Spectators' inherent civilizational light must push them towards extrême droite, the final rampart of French identity. Interweaving Barrès's birth culture with Maurras's integral nationalism, Puy-Folian French identity is imminent to blood and Catholicism, and moved by the metaphysical will to triumph under the noble. Rejecting this hierarchy, or following liberal assumptions of equality amongst and within identities, renders one un-French. By recreating a golden age of societal harmony, the park spurs violence against those it excludes from French birth culture. Equally dangerous is the revival of birth cultures Puy du Fou spreads internationally. Following the New Right coalition against globalized norms, Puy has opened a park in Spain and holds projects in the US and China. Lack of research on Puy du Fou's role in French nationalism is therefore alarming. How much is dismissed as mere entertainment?